I'm embarrassed to say that I am an expert on UFO files. Over the pandemic, I kind of just fell into let's say, a wormhole or a rabbit hole. And it started with the Showtime documentary first. That was the first time that I saw, like, oh my God, there's high quality footage of UFOs. Now, unfortunately, Showtime didn't vet all of those videos properly. Some of them are, in fact, fake. And I think that's the tricky thing about this whole UFO scene. Um, but I'm going to tell you about my 5 top favorite UFO cases. So, but before I do, I just want to say yes, there's some misinformation. There's some stuff that's genuinely puzzling. And then you have to kind of discern. There's like a Venn diagram of bullshit. And you have to kind of discern what's real and what's not. All right, let's start with one really fun, great case. Obviously, you may have heard of it, Roswell, New Mexico. Some stuff that I may know that not everyone knows unless you've wasted a massive amount of time. Jesse Marcel was the Air Force officer. It's been a couple years now, but he was the Army officer, military. He was the one that was called to the scene. There was a rancher. My memory is a little fuzzy, but I know all the major plot points. I've kind of like pushed the UFO stuff out of my mind for like a year or two because I caught one military person lying, which I'll get into that case in a few minutes. But anyways, Jesse Marcel Sr., and that's important because his son. So he went to this ranch and he collected. He basically they called him. They're like, I don't know this thing. This rancher was like, all this shit fell on my, and there's silver everywhere, metallic silver objects. So he collects a box full of it up, and Jesse Marcel Sr. drives it home. Well, he's on his way to the military base, but he's passing his house, and he's like, I'm pretty sure this is a UFO because this is from a UFO because we've been getting reports of UFOs and stuff. So he stops at his house, and I think it's like 11 p.m. He wakes up his like 8-year-old son, Jesse Marcel Sr., and I think he woke up his wife too. And he took this box of like weird metallic objects, and they all kind of, he put it on the kitchen floor, and they all kind of went through it. And what was really fascinating is Jesse Marcel Jr., he did recently pass away, but I watched kind of a testimony with like local politicians, and a really intelligent, articulate guy. And he had a bar when his father brought home the, alien material. There was one bar that was about this long, and it was embossed in sort of a purple hieroglyphics. And he had it recreated. You can find it. It's the videos here on YouTube. It's interesting. And just the way that he speaks about the whole thing, you can tell that he just doesn't give a shit if you believe him or not. It was like really, he either was an Oscar-winning actor or he really found this stuff in his father's kitchen. I don't think there was any collusion there. I definitely think, can we say empirically whether it's, alien metal? No, but it is a little weird that the whole thing, like, it's, one thing I'll say, it's scientifically, well, maybe it's not unlikely that father and son would both be mentally ill and lying about this. I guess it could be genetic. But I'm inclined to believe them. And here's the thing. Sometimes I can believe them, but that can also mean that that doesn't mean they're objectively correct. You know what I mean? Like, they could be mistakenly authentic. But that's a really interesting case, because there's all kinds of murky stuff, cover-ups in the Roswell situation. Like, they made Jesse Marcel go back and take a picture with what was clearly looked like a kite. It was a radar detector. So the photo in Roswell that they made Jesse Marcel pose with, it's an infamous photo from the 1950s. It's clearly a radar detector, kite of some sort. But the objects that he found in the field were, I mean, this guy was way too intelligent. He went to a radar school. There's no way he would mistake a radar detector for all this, alien metal. Like, you'd have to be retarded. Which also statistically, some of the aliens are probably retarded if we're thinking about it. I know, not supposed to say the R word, but, out in outer space, I mean, they're a higher intelligence than us. We're the retards. But, okay, next case. What's my other favorite? Rendlesham Forest. I believe this was 1980, somewhere in the 1980s. Rendlesham Forest. It's a famous case. Some weird stuff absolutely did happen, is by all accounts. But one guy was lying. The other ones kind of cross. Like, I think a good thing for extracting kind of empirical evidence or truth is you want to triangulate or cross-validate different sources, and this case has a lot of that. What is his name? Basically, all these guys, it's about Christmas, 1982, Rendlesham Forest in the United Kingdom. The United States has a nuclear, we're just keeping nuclear weapons in the UK, just in case we want to launch them at Russia. Bizarre. But so these guys were all guarding this base. It's a U.S. type of military base. And around Christmas, it was 2 days before Christmas, I believe, and they start seeing all these like weird lights in the forest, which, is right around the nuclear military base. But the thing is, like, if you see red and blue lights outside of nuclear weapons, you got to go, that's a problem. So they go out and, there's different accounts of what happens. Some guys see the lights moving through the forest. What was his name? The other guy, Jim. There's Jim Pendleton, and then I forgot the liar's name, but he said he saw a triangular black UFO. The other guy never saw that. He said he saw a flash of light, and then he had some kind of time dilation, which is a common thing these witnesses say, is they like lose track of the period of a few hours. What's interesting, though, it was a great story. I don't regret believing the bulk of it for a while. A small black triangular UFO about 9 feet by 7 feet, and the one guy, officer, you can look it up, but the one guy, I think his name was Jim, he said there was hieroglyphics. Like, you know what it was? He touched the UFO, and it, like, downloaded, like, almost like a binary code of zeros and ones in his mind. And he didn't know what it meant, but later he wrote them all down in his journal, and then a few years, never thought about it again, and then presented the binary code to, I don't know, an IT guy. And that guy gave him an interpretation that said, like, for surveillance of humanity, year 5000, blah, blah, blah. So I think that last guy, though, I caught him lying. What did he say? Because basically, like, Ancient Aliens or one of these shows he was supposed to have a small interview, and then they expanded it to where it was like a full half-hour show. And so I think he started to elaborate and exaggerate the tale in order to get some more stage time. But there are two other guys his superior officer made a recording as he walked through the forest and documented everything with the lights. But it was more than just lights. It was the speed at which the lights were moving, and around the nuclear base. Like, you can Google. There's multiple weird examples of unidentified flying, now aerial, objects outside of nuclear facilities. Fuck, what's that other one? There was a great one from 1950. See, I'm not super prepared on the UFO because I've kind of fallen out of it after I caught that guy from Rendlesham lying. One of 3 guys was lying, though. There were 2 other guys. One of the guys I heard on a podcast, too, he was like, there was no need to lie about it. Like, it was a legitimately phenomenal and weird experience. But this guy had to go and exaggerate the tale, and that, like, kind of ruined the credibility of the whole thing. Which I think is, like, I think it's a common thing in the UFO thing, because there's so much, you can get a book deal, you can get a TV show, like, you can, it's their way of, like, getting out of the hood, so to speak. Oh my God, I just remembered something about Rendlesham. So I think this is a big piece of concrete evidence from Rendlesham, is a couple of the guys that came into contact with the UAP lights ended up getting some radioactive contamination, which is common among UAPs because the theory is that they're, powered by no visible signs of propulsion, some kind of gravitational physics defying thing. 2 of the guys got sick from coming in contact with the UFOs, and they could not get any kind of disability compensation because it couldn't be proven that they came in contact with the nuclear weapons. Well, finally, they wrote to Senator John McCain, and his secretary, opens it and is reading it, and then finally got to John McCain. I don't know if he was a proponent of UFOs or not, but they were finally able to get these guys on disability pay or whatever it is. And I don't know. I mean, that's a concrete piece of, like, something fucked with them. You know what I mean? And then this is what's also interesting. If you dig into the Rendlesham case even deeper, the CIA or secret, I believe it's the Air Force Special Operating, there's a special name for the men in black. I believe it's the USOFA. I forgot the acronym, but it's something like that. They wiped these guys' medical records from the military, which is not legal, not ethical, and is very strange. Rendelsham Forest incident. All right, we'll move on to the next one, but I wanted to get you the names because I feel, I don't know, I'm just in a weird place with the UFO stuff. I love it. It was a great story. It really helped with my depression there for a good year or 2, but then I kind of got embarrassed because I felt like I was believing too many of the people that were making claims, and I felt stupid because I did catch one of the guys saying one thing in one interview and then a slightly different thing in another interview, and they didn't really line up. But that doesn't take away that there's a lot of legitimate, extra phenomenal stuff happening. One of my other favorite cases, 1964, Lonnie Zamora. He was a police officer in Socorro, New Mexico. This is one of my favorite cases because I'm such a loser. This is one of my favorite cases because first of all, he's a police officer. So he's a police officer. I don't know if it matters, but he's Mexican. Mexican people are great. But also, he was chasing a car that had been speeding. He had no intention of coming into contact with anything, phenomenal. He's chasing a speeding car in Socorro, New Mexico, Lonnie Zamora. Then all of a sudden he sees a sort of, again, you know what's interesting? It was a cylindrical object, kind of an oval object, very much like the case we'll get to in a few minutes, the Tic-Tac UFO case, which is actually my favorite case. So Lonnie Zamora sees this, like, basically a Tic-Tac land. And then he sees two small figures, like, moving around it. There's a good animation on YouTube of it. And it's, like, not a really well-known case, but I can't remember. I stumbled into it. I was always looking. I was, like, addicted. I was, like, getting high off these cases, every time I'd find a new case. So, but what's so fascinating about this one was right away Lonnie Zamora called the higher-ups, and then they called the FBI, and then there was a swarm of FBI there. And there's also burn marks from when the Tic-Tac took off. Initially, there was a blue flame to get the Tic-Tac off of the ground. And then once it got higher up into the air, it seemed to be using a different kind of propulsion system, let's say. So, but what's interesting is all of the indentations in this New Mexico sand, let's say dirt or earth. Scientists that were on site calculated that the indentation into the ground from the poles that came from this Tic-Tac, and that's the interesting thing about this Tic-Tac too, was that it had, I don't know what the term is, but like poles came out to kind of support it when it had landed. What's interesting is that they calculated the weight of the craft, and it was something phenomenal for the size of it. Because they could measure, I believe, like all 3 or all 4 indentations from the craft, as well as the weight. And I mean, it was really sunken in there. So it was an incredibly heavy craft. And all of the plants in where the sort of craft took off were burned and charred. And these are dry New Mexico plantation. And there's photographs of all of this. And Lonnie also really had no incentive to lie. I mean, let's assume he is lying, that just creates a shitstorm. I mean, you're Mexican in 1950s, no, 64. You're a police officer, and you're saying there's essentially, some like non-identifiable craft flying into the air. Like, everything would suggest, it's not rational. You know what I mean? So either he is having a psychotic break, which is possible, but there's also a lot of evidence. So it's another one of those cases where there's like something happened, but yet, and I think this is the problem with a lot of UFO evidence, is that it's all what we would call indirect evidence. It's like you've got you've got a burnt plant, you've got radiation, you've got this, you know what I mean? But you've got dozens and dozens of pieces of indirect evidence, but very little direct evidence. Like we're talking like a carbon piece of metal from a craft or something. Okay, 2 more cases and then I'm done. I think this is supposed to be a little more educational or comedy related, but UFOs are fun. Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1994, 93 or 94. This is a really fascinating case. Basically, people had been reporting UAPs in the area for 3 or 4 days. And then on this one particular day, so this was I don't know if it was a private school or some kind of, you can go and watch the interviews with the kids. It's called the Ariel, Ariel school. These are like smart kids. You can tell like they're, you know what I mean? It's not public school, but they're in Ruwa. Is it Zimbabwe or South Africa? Might have been South Africa. But the city is Ruwa, Ruwa. And about 60 kids saw a craft land, a silver metallic craft land. And then again, 2 beings get out. And they're claimed to be about the height of the children. And then here's what's interesting, though. And they did kind of describe the classic gray alien look, which is interesting and strange that all kids would kind of confer on this. And it could it be a weird anomaly of mass hysteria and some kind of psychological phenomenon where one kid says he sees this and then they go, oh my God, you're right, I saw that, that could be. But it's also just a wild case. 60 kids all saw the same thing. And one kid described, a couple of them might have described too, the way they were moving was almost like they were glitching, like the atoms that made up their physical substance was almost like glitching, like it was coming like in and out of visibility, like they were, and it looked like the creature was like almost like the way that humans move on the moon. That was the way they described the creature. Man, I get goosebumps sometimes thinking about it. Even if the case is false, like, I mean, it's a big universe, and as soon as Earth is about universe is 13 billion and change years old. Earth is about 4.5 billion. As soon as the circumstances for life could happen on Earth, they did, which kind of insinuates that life is not that special. As soon as the kind of core elements are there, it's like Kinder, it just sparks. Life sparks. So I think there's life out there for sure. The question is it intelligent? And have they survived their own nuclear age? Have they died out? It's possible that intelligent life rose and fell, went extinct. So it's like, are we alive at the same time as other intelligent life? Okay, last case. What is the last case? It is the Tic-Tac UFO case. I have some details. Not everyone knows all of the details because I've done a lot of research, I guess. It's funny, I haven't talked about this in a while. I think like sometimes you get embarrassed. This case, I think, is the most credible UFO case. UAP, let's say, because we don't know if it's flying or if it's just an aerial phenomenon. So, I believe this case was 2004. It's either somewhere between 2004 and 2008. My memory's a little fuzzy on the year because it wasn't as pertinent a detail. Okay, but basically, the USS Nimitz, an airstrike carrier battleship. They're going around, they're doing their things. That's where they're a huge boat, planes, little jet fighter planes take off and do their training exercises so that, they can prepare for Iran. They had been seeing The radar operator on the Nimitz, his name is Kevin Day. You can look him up. I've watched so many episodes. Like, I've done, like, deep dives where I, like, went into, like, a day in the life of Kevin Day, and I'm seeing, like, what he's going through, and, like, I can picture his face, and he'd been seeing anomalous points on the radar, and they just upgraded all their radar systems on, I believe, on the planes. Fuck, what was the model of the plane? F-16s. So I thought, oh, you know what? Maybe it's this. So they recalibrated everything. He's like, no, we're still seeing these blips on the radar. Like, they're not supposed to be in here. This is U.S. military training area. So then, and the blips are kind of moving around, high altitudes, fast speeds. You know, nothing crazy, but enough to where the radar operators like. So finally, one day, the blips show up on the radar again, and Kevin Day is like, "Hey, can you guys go check this out? Like, what is going on with this? This, I mean, you know, this. Can you go like do a clear, because this could be a safety hazard." So, 2 F-16 fighter jets go out. One is with Commander David Fravor and his backseat pilot, Alex Dietrich. She's a woman. Just so we're getting both perspectives here. The other is 2 Air Force pilots that refuse to go public and be known. But both David and Alex confirmed there was another. So they go out. It was about 100 miles off of San Diego, between San Diego and Catalina Island. Now, Catalina Island is interesting because I used to live in Orange County, and Catalina Island is a highly electromagnetic anomaly. And I know that from doing research on the UFOs, but also, like, there's just all kinds of weird stories there, and forget if the U.S. government was using. There's something in the earth there. If you've ever seen the TV show Lost, you know, there's like that island has like a highly electromagnetic thing, like anomaly. And just a brief recap: the 4 major forces in the universe: gravitational forces, electromagnetism, the weak and strong nuclear forces. So electromagnetism is a big deal. I wanted to, before I got into comedy, I wanted to be a theoretical physicist, but it was a pipe dream. You know, not like comedy, like real, you know, comedy's real blue collar, practical work. Electromagnetic. So they're flying out, right? And they get to the point where they've seen the radar blips. And all of a sudden, David Fravor sees, I can't remember how high up they were. It was maybe 80,000, maybe it was 30,000 feet, 20,000. No, he was just high enough to where he could see the object. Picture yourself in an F-16. You're just, you know, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 yards up. Well, anyways, him and Alex, they see this Tic-Tac looking object. And it's, not every video on YouTube will tell you this, but it was kind of like bouncing around, like almost like, not a ping pong ball, but like, let's say you drop a soda can, or like, let's say you drop an iPhone, and then boom, the way that it falls, that was the way that I've heard. If I looked at like many different interviews, and Fravor said in one of them that was the way the object was moving. So you could think, oh, hey, all right, well, maybe it's a light refraction. Well, the problem is it was creating white water foam, which a lot of these pilots, they're professional trained observers. White water foam suggests a physical object on the water because it's interacting with the surface of the ocean. Okay? Next, they have radar on the F-16. So now they can cross-validate the radar. Okay, that's not just a light. You know, you're getting multiple senses. You're getting visual confirmation. You're getting radar confirmation. You're seeing whitewater foam. Well, as soon as they start descending towards the object, the Tic-Tac goes, this is the sound that he said it made. Burp. I don't think it made that sound, but that was what went on in his mind. But it's almost to suggest an amount of consciousness, which is interesting. So it's like, are there organic beings inside the Tic-Tac? Or is the Tic-Tac itself the alien? Whew, that's crazy to think. What's his name? Jordan Peele made an interesting movie. It's kind of plays on that theme, actually. I forgot the name of his movie. It was after Get Out. It wasn't Get Out. So then Fravor starts doing a sort of a downward spiral. The object starts mirroring him and meeting him. And they're like, oh my God. I mean, this is just a high level of consciousness that you're dealing with. And then at a certain point, the object goes vertical. And they can calculate on the radar where it's gone. It's gone up to 80,000 feet in, I mean, a split second. No visible signs of propulsion. It's defying what's known of modern physics. And then David reports back to Kevin Day or whoever was the radar operator at that moment. And he says, yeah, it's gone. And then they go, you're not going to believe this. It's at our cat point, which is like an intersectional training point, which was like 60 miles away. And he said he like got goosebumps from this. And then I believe they were not able to contact the object again. But they did get infrared footage of the object, which is like that like kind of grainy white and black footage. But the government has much higher definition footage than they're releasing. I don't know why they're playing these games. Like, why release footage to us? It looks like it's, 480p, if you've got 4K. It's like, just give them tidbits. Give them tidbits, So then after that, Fravor, Kevin Day said, not necessarily men in black, but unidentified men came onto the ship and took all of the radar tapes. That's fucking weird. Now, just to play devil's advocate to myself, could this be the only other option besides something phenomenal and, pseudo magical? Could this be black technology by the United States? Some kind of, maybe they've been working on, I've heard rumors of anti-gravitex, like anti-gravitational technology for decades, right? Maybe they've been working on that and they've kept it very secret. But then again, it's like, how good? People aren't good. Human beings are not that great at keeping secrets. But then again, if it's a secret, maybe that's why we don't know about it. So I think that is the most credible case because you've got two high-level professional trained observers with zero incentive to lie. Two others that won't even come out because they're afraid of judgment, right? You've got whitewater foam. You've got visible contact, radar reports, just fantastic observations. So something weird is definitely going on, for sure. And the U.S. government, their incentive to hide it is to ego. You know, why would you want to communicate to your citizens that you're not really in control, you're not really in charge, you're not the alpha dog in the country or in the universe or in the earth? You know what I mean? Like, there's many fear. Fear is another reason to lie and obfuscate the truth. You know, like, you look pretty fucking stupid if you tell your citizens, like, yeah, we don't know what it is. Sorry, we can't protect you. Yeah, we know we're taking billions in tax dollars, but we can't. We just can't help you, really. We're fucked. You know what I mean? That's never been the U.S. government's modus operandi. Their egos are too big. The military-industrial complex. Yeah. Tell me what you think. What was your favorite case, and what do you think about all this? All right, thank you so much for listening to Night School. If you made it this far, have a great life.